robots like running 4 different autonomous driving programs all at once: GPS, object detection, computer vision driving. All of this is happening in real time, milliseconds, while it's also processing, all of the wires, modules, and inspecting all of the array, and taking the pictures, downloading the data, and putting it up. I think by the time we're done, we will substantially reduce the risk of solar sites. So yeah, that's kind of my hope.
Welcome back to Suncast. Thank you for giving us your only non-renewable resource. That's your time. I promise we're going to take good care of it. Your ears are precious. We're going to pour into them the kinds of goodness that is going to help expand your horizons, grow your opportunities. You're in the right place. Suncast is here to help you lean in, dig in, to build a career and a company with meaning in the clean energy transition. Today's entrepreneur is someone that I've been pursuing for years. We've been friends since way back when he and I both were just getting started in this industry. He was selling solar panels and sort of building the solar company in Sacramento area of California, and I was buying solar panels to build solar projects for municipalities throughout Northern California. How times have changed. Derek Chase is an entrepreneur who is definitely in the serial entrepreneur category. More than 15 years in the business. He has been a pioneer in the operations and maintenance segment, in particular, thinking through how operations and maintenance works at a scale that had heretofore really not been contemplated, how to structurally scale up a business and then sell that business and then go and build another business that builds on the learnings that you get. You see, it all comes back to habit and skill stacking and pattern matching. That's what we talk about here at Suncast. You're going to learn a lot about that through Derek Chase's journey as we dig into that and his new business, OnSight, today. If you like these kinds of conversations, you are in luck. I'm so happy for you that you found Suncast today. I hope that you'll subscribe. Just tick the subscribe button. If you make it all the way through and you really love this episode, as Derek and other friends who are regular listeners do, please leave us a rating and review. That's how other smart folks just like you are going to find this show. In the meantime, I want you to get ready to tune up your skills, Solar Warrior, because we're going to dig into another tactical, practical, deep dive episode with one of my favorite entrepreneurs in the space, Derek Chase, here on Suncast. I want you to describe for me, as you were sitting at the perch, some would say even the pinnacle of entrepreneurship. You've sold your business. You now have been subsumed by this giant organization called NovaSource, which is sort of the top of the mountain for O&M at the time, operations and maintenance, for those who are unfamiliar with the technical jargon. What began to occur to you that precipitated a revelation or a reignition of this entrepreneurial spirit, that there was a new problem to solve? Could you enunciate that problem for me?
Yeah, I think I was trying to wrap my head around kind of the big drone movement and drone reports, and I got really interested in that. We did some remote drone flights back in the day, and I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and it kind of left me wanting more as somebody who I've commissioned a lot of sites. Commissioning was my favorite job ever. Travel the world, kick everybody off the site, test everything, turn it on, get to 100% production, and leave that site in good health. So that was always the funnest job for me. And I remember somebody said, I don't think people need to even walk around the site anymore with these aerial views perspective that we're getting.
Right.
And I'm like, man, that's crazy, because if I'm going to go to a site, I'm walking around, I'm looking at the wires, I'm looking at what could be a huge risk. I've seen so many issues over the years in the field that I thought it was interesting that I think we were getting a little too comfortable with the results that was giving us in terms of the site health. But it was also the sites were getting so big, it wasn't super practical to have people walking around. Yeah. So it was just always kind of stirring in my head that there should be another way. And so kind of just stewed on that for a while.
And perspective, that's like 2020, 2021 timeframe, just for folks that are thinking about, like, the Olympics had just had the big drone light show, right? Like, drones were everywhere. It seemed like the zeitgeist was drones are taking over, kind of like the whole, like, robots are taking our jobs kind of situation. And you've got, as well, at the time, differing views on aerial thermal imagery, drones versus our friend Rob, who ended up getting acquired by Novasource, doing it through planes. And, what's the right way to do this on the ground versus the air?
A lot of debates there, yeah.
A lot of debates around what is the most optimal way as these sites go from acre to hectare to, like county-wide sites. How do we address it? And but what's the underlying problem that really needed to be solved? It was avoiding human error, right?
Human error, but also through Sun System. I mean, at one point we had like 400 technicians, and more than anything, it became a logistical company. How do you get people to the site? How do you get them the parts? How do you get those parts back after the RMA? More than anything, you're a logistics company as like when you get to scale as a service organization.
Yeah.
So you start looking at these utility sites. They're in very remote areas. The conditions are horrible. It's sandy. I mean, you've been out there. It's sandy. It's windy. It's pretty much, they give the land to these energy, whether it's wind or solar or whatever, because nobody wants to live there for the most part. And so very remote locations, high turnover rates. You're battling high turnover rates on these utility sites because people get lonely out there. You're going to show up to the same spot every day with two people. You lack motivation to get out there and constantly just wander around the site looking for things. So there was just this gap in what needed to be done versus what was practical. It's not really anybody's fault. It's just the situation. And it was kind of leaving this gap in the space. So it was really a shot in the dark in the beginning. Total, I don't know, let's see if we can do this, right?
Well, take me to that point of 2020, 2021, the tinkering entrepreneur mind starts to get working in the garage again. You told me a story, I think, of going to a robot competition or something. I can't really remember clearly exactly what it was, but take me that moment where you started thinking, wait, is this really going to be solved by drones? What other options are out there? And use that as an opportunity to introduce us to OnSight and why what you're building now is going to help solve this problem.
Yeah, OnSight's really been started with a random idea and then just headed down the path. And the best way I've been able to describe it is you're walking down a dark hallway and you don't really know what's behind the next door. You just kind of keep opening up these doors and walking down these hallways. And it's just evolved so rapidly with that approach. OnSight today, we use robotics and computer vision to inspect large utility solar farms. Think of a Roomba on a solar farm with a camera that can automatically inspect modules, wiring, etc., and report all that information back instantaneously. Like if we find a problem, we're able to get that information to a customer right away, and they can address something if it's of high risk. There's no lag in the reporting. And then most recently, we're really excited to announce our OWL product, which is a smoke and fire detection device that you can put on commercial roofs or solar farms to detect smoke and fire outside. And that's really, we have kind of two high tech levels of the company. One's autonomous navigation and how do you maneuver around a site using autonomous navigation. And the other is computer vision and how do we identify things on the site, whether they're good or bad, or count them, etc. And today we're able to inspect a utility solar farm 100%. This has never really been possible
without human intervention, basically.
For the most part, yeah, we're getting there. The holy grail is push a button, robot scans the entire site.
Right.
And so there's aspects to it that are still manual today that we're working through.
How much of it is integrating machine learning such that, like a Roomba, the robot starts to learn the terrain and that kind of element?
Yeah, there's multi-levels to autonomous navigation. I've had to kind of learn all this. We got really lucky, and we brought on Brandon Seitz. He was the head of autonomous navigation for Trimble and Lockheed Martin. And he really, we have an amazing team of PhDs and just really high-level folks. So I think we've got a high ceiling, but got to learn a lot about autonomous navigation. First, you have to implement object detection so we don't run into things. That's number one of everything is safety. So you kind of start there. Just and a lot of it is we're really familiar with how this has evolved in our cars, right? First you back up, car automatically stops when you're about to hit something or beeps or whatever, right? Then there's like lane following. Okay, well, when we're in a row of modules, now we can use the row of modules. It was actually kind of a lucky happenstance that these rows create these like lanes for us.
Right.
And really all you have to do is keep the robot in the middle of the lanes. And so you don't have to really use GPS in that circumstance. You could use cameras to handle the autonomous navigation in that regard.
Yeah.
And then there's GPS navigation.
And that reduces battery drain, I presume. That's the only like advantage.
No.
I'm just wondering, I'm technically wondering like why it matters if you use GPS versus cameras. I guess the ability to connect to GPS is one thing, right? I'm thinking about, but whether is it a resource drain?
A little bit. Yeah, that's not a huge issue. You're actually using all of it at once is the answer, right?
Yeah.
All of this stuff's on at once. So as you build these layers, you're using them all and you're cross-referencing them all. So that's the big thing. There's a compute problem happening there. So you got to think the robot's like running 4 different autonomous driving programs all at once: GPS, object detection, computer vision driving. All of this is happening in real time, milliseconds, while it's also processing, all of the wires, modules, and inspecting all of the array and taking the pictures, downloading the data, and putting it up. All this is happening simultaneously where we have an NVIDIA computer on board. So that's the cool thing about the robot is its payload capacity.
Yeah.
So if you look at, if you've seen the robot, it has a big thermal camera on it. We can just continue to load this thing up. It's 500 pounds. It's got a big battery. It has a huge payload. So we can put a big computer on there with a lot of processing power. And it can do a lot of things all at once. Where this stuff really wasn't possible even just a couple of years ago. You couldn't do what we're doing today.
I'm glad you went there because that's my next couple of questions, actually. So let's back up for a second and give folks perspective who've never been on a solar site of what solutions exist or existed in the 2021 timeframe that you started iterating and innovating around the idea of how to do this with robots. How is this traditionally done? How were you doing it with SST? Like, what is this replacing?
Yeah, really, the only way is to go walk around the site, right? And so walking around's one thing. That's a huge pain in the ass already, right?
And the interface for that walking around is a tablet, some sort of...
Yeah, most of the time you'll have a cell phone. I don't know if anybody's using a tablet. It's probably a little big to carry around. So you have a cell phone. Eventually, people started making all these different apps. Yeah. So then there was like work order apps became like the thing. We used Salesforce Service Lightning or whatever it was, which was decent. But if you think about it, if you're a person, you're walking around, you're taking these pictures. Every time you find something wrong, you have to take a picture. You have to sit in there. You got to type it in. And then you take 3 more steps. What happens if you see something else? What happens if you run into 28 issues in a row? You're going to be pretty tired of recording. I think that's one thing we don't get enough credit for with the robot. We kind of, or at least our customers take it a little bit for granted, is that when we take a picture, it's thermal, it's 4K, we can zoom in, we can document it really well. And that work order is done. And that's all done 100% remotely. There's nobody out in the field doing this with their phone.
And virtually instantly.
Yeah, instantly. Yeah. And processed through the computer vision, like all of that happens.
And by the way, after the 20th photo on the 13th row, there's 0 fatigue to the robot.
Yeah, we scan.
There's no like efficiency loss in photo taking capacity or information sending capacity.
Yeah, the most laborious
he's not asking for coffee.
The boringest task the robot does is the barcode scanning. And that's just like...
What is it? Where is the barcode?
So it'll scan like the QR code. Oh, it actually doesn't scan the QR code. We take a picture of it, a high-res picture. We're running live video.
Sorry, is every solar panel equipped with a barcode? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Every solar panel has like a QR code or a barcode on the back. And some of the scope of work after you're done with the project is that people want to know where all of the serial numbers of all the modules are, so that if there's a defect, they can go pinpoint exactly, on the production line, they can find out exactly where it is.
Are you creating digital twins in real time of plants that didn't have them?
Yeah, everything we do gets plotted on a digital twin map.
How cool is that?
And we can use everybody's digital twin. We're not,
Right. So like
happy
Raptor
to use
Maps and all
Raptor
these others
Maps or
that do it. Yeah.
Heliolytics or any of these folks. Yeah,
Right.
we don't mind.
Beautiful. What needed to be true for this business to work? Go 5, 10, like you said, 2 years, 3 years back, this wouldn't have worked. I remember when we talked in 2021, you were like, man, it's kind of a stretch. I'm walking through a dark hallway, opening doors, not sure what's behind them. What needed to be true for this to work?
It's really the team we put together. I think we had an exciting project that, there's a lot of robotics projects that don't have a home, like a market and a need. And so I think we had something that was very realistic, but you needed some high level talent. And that's what made everything come into reality was really, the folks on our team, John Shepard and David Coe and Graham Ryland and Brandon Seitz. These guys are high level professionals who have built things for NASA, and they do amazing things every day. And it's really cool to be able to say, hey, could we do this? And the answer is typically yes, but yeah, that's what made everything come into reality. Was
I imagine
really
like also
you've got a great team.
Yeah, you've got access. You sold a business that had thousands of customers to one of the top companies. And now you're turning around and being able to provide a service to your past clients. I imagine that probably didn't have to be true, but it was helpful. What about computing power? Is there any technical limitations, thresholds that were passed in the last few years that made it possible?
Yeah, so we went to a SAMNA event, the Solar Asset Management Conference with Solar Plaza. McCarthy Construction was like, looks kind of cool. We'll call you later if we're interested.
Yeah.
And we got a call like a week later, and they're like, hey, can you be in Arizona for this 1 hour demo in like 3 days? And I'm like, shit, all right. So we loaded up the road, drove down there. I think I drove 25 hours in a row or something, slept one night in a hotel to shower, and then like to barely make it to the site within minutes. And then you get there and you get zero setup time. There's 20 people there. The utility company's there. Everybody's there. This is like the first time we've ever done a live demo, and live demos are, if you're in technology, like 80% chance they go wrong.
Right.
It went right. We crushed the demo, got some amazing data. And then that kind of gave us our next opportunity, which was, oh, hey, cool. Can you now drive to Texas and bring a robot to Texas? Like, shit, now we had to literally drove all the way to Texas from Sacramento for a 2-week demo. So it was baby steps, man, of slowly gaining confidence from our partners, and then continuing to just refine the product after each opportunity and more feedback we got.
You'll appreciate this, and hopefully you'll enjoy the category and sort of classification. Rue Phillips told me a story that's almost identical. He's probably told you the Jinko story, where they literally were like, we love this. Can you be in Jacksonville tomorrow? And he called his guy and was like, I just booked you a flight. Oh, man. But that's just like, as an entrepreneur, the ability to say, yes, I will be there tomorrow, no problem, right? It's a muscle that's developed. I think that there's also an instinct, but you had to know McCarthy. You had to know, like, this is McCarthy. I'm going to take this seriously, right? And you had to know that your team was ready to say yes to that. What gave you the confidence when McCarthy said they were ready, that your team could deliver and that you were willing to take that risk? Because you said 80% live demo failure. Like, that's a big risk.
I think it was blind confidence at the time. Now that we've got some scale, you understand where we've worked through a lot of challenges, but I don't know if I knew what I knew now, if I'd probably ask for more time or be a little bit more cautious about it. But also those opportunities still come up even when you get to be a bigger company.
Sure.
And I always go, shit, man, that's a long flight, or that's going to be a lot of work to get out there and meet with that group or whatever. But then I always go, man, I would have killed for this opportunity 1 year ago.
Yes.
So I go to that mindset, and then I just go do it.
I love that. I love that right there.
You can't forget kind of that perspective.
That framework, actually, I want to invite people to just reflect on that. If the opportunity presents itself at whatever stage you're at, and you reflect back and think, would a year ago me have jumped at this opportunity? And the answer is yes. Get off your ass. Like, I find that entrepreneurs do get comfortable sometimes as we grow, right? I mean, a great example, I said, I won't mention names, but I said, this month I'm only focused on sales, not traveling. I'm done. Like, I literally did two events in the same week here in Raleigh, back to back. It was maddening. It was like basically an SPI level event, hectic. I get a phone call from the head of global marketing from a major tracker company that is doing an event here on the East Coast tomorrow, and said, Undersecretary X, Diplomat Y are all going to be there. Don't you want to come and just record it?
Yep.
Right? And I was like, no, I don't actually. But a year ago, Nico would punch me in the ear for saying that. Right?
Yep.
Oh, man. All right. So you built a career on servicing really the residential market, a hard to service market that people were effectively ignoring or trying to come up with like clever, creative, scale ways using technology. And you said, no, the manpower can solve this. When you got to NovaSource, you saw, again, like, and I recommend for everyone, we talk about this, go work for a really big company. See what it looks like at the top of the mountain to have a purview of everything that's happening in the industry, like you did at NovaSource. Who then now do you sell to? Like, I imagine I can attune what are the problems you solve for them, but in a sentence, like, who do you sell to and what problems do you solve for those clients that they were solving in other ways before they met you?
We work for asset owners and O&M providers. I think there's a variety of tasks we're performing right now. I think we crushed commissioning. I've got a whole theory I've now developed since commissioning multiple sites on 100% DC inspection or O&M costs. Like, I'll just jump into it a little bit.
Do it. Jump in. Dive down.
Yeah, basically, folks are doing like 10% visual commissioning. So say, hey, we'll send people to go walk the site and, tug on some wires and look at some things. They don't have like a one eyes, not a thermal camera, which is a huge advantage for the robot.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking is that O&M is basically solving all of the problems from commissioning for like 10 years. The way that, like, what we're finding
bad commissioning provides job opportunity for O&M.
I think it's, if you really addressed everything up front, I think your O&M costs would be significantly, like, 80% less. I think it's a lot more than anybody would even assume, because nobody's inspected 100% of a site like we have. Nobody can sit here and say, I've looked at 1 million connectors and 10,000 of them had issues. Like, nobody can give you those actual results because everybody's just spot checking things. Wow. So we have no perspective.
It's fascinating to me that nobody can do that right now.
Yeah, it's not even really possible. I mean, if you tried to have humans go out and all use thermal cameras, and then the thermal cameras, you have to take the picture, like, to even get all the documentation done and coordinate all that would be like, nobody can even pull it off. Because, the sites we're on now, they have 1.5 million solar panels out there. Which means 2 million connectors, which means, 400,000 home runs or whatever, right?
Do you know what the coolest thing is? And you guys probably thought about this. I'm just inventing things right now on the fly, but like, I can imagine that your robot in 3 to 5 years with AI on board is going to start finding problems we didn't know existed. And it's going to do so because it's catching up on the smallest variances that a human wouldn't have captured without a level of detailed inspection that would have heretofore been cost prohibitive, meaning just exactly what you're saying. We don't do 100% DC commissioning because it's cost prohibitive and it's time prohibitive. And we can just give them a contract to fix any errors that come up for the next 10 years instead of spending all that money up front, which nobody wants to spend. Man, fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find maybe electrical connection that's not totally failed, but it's hotter than it should be, and there's more resistance than there should be. That may take 5 years to fail.
Yeah.
But we know about it right now, where nobody knew about that before. So that's why I'm thinking, people are coming in year 3, 4, 5, and they're going, oh, these things are, something happened out here. I'm like, nothing happened. This happened 5 years ago.
Do you know what's cool? Like if you match that with a solar grade style qualifier of the product, now you can do predictive failure analytics on valuations of the project.
Yeah, we actually we're looking into different reporting tools and partners there to continue to digest the data and analyze it. Yeah, it's an entirely new perspective, and we're finally getting to the point now. We have enough scale and data in, and we're going to be issuing a report here soon. You've seen a lot of the different drone reports where it's like, hey, this is the type of issues we found. We're going to give our kind of like from the ground perspective. And even if you look at a lot of the drone reports, 70% of the issues are on the DC side of the system. Only 7% of the problems are really from the modules. So if you want to go hit quality, you got to hit the biggest piece of the pie. And I think we really address that, for our customers.
How did you fund this? How did you lift it out of the dirt?
Yeah, initially, even finding a robot was really difficult. This was probably 4 years ago now, when I first started kind of looking around for what robot to use. The robot, everything that we use, literally almost everything we use right now wasn't even available at the time that I started this project. That's how, if you've seen Figure AI or just all of the money and NVIDIA, obviously, with their stock, there's massive computing power and investment going, and it's just the technology. We're just riding the wave of technology stack that we're on. Like robots are getting better, batteries are getting better, all of this. So anyways, to start it from a funding perspective, I used my own cash. I'm playing around like in my garage with this thing. I'm using like a contractor to kind of help put the robot pieces together and build it how I think it should be built. But it was really just kind of a side project. And then eventually there was in Sacramento, we have a accelerator called the Growth Factory. And so when I sold the business, when I came back, I put some of my money in the accelerator and some local funds. I really love Sacramento and wanted to reinvest in the community. So anyways, they gave me a call and they said, hey, would you be interested in the accelerator? I pitched the robot, which didn't even have the full perspective of what I was going to do or understood the market or a lot of things. But I got in there. They give us our first $50,000. And it's more than the money. It's the vote of the confidence of somebody else that kind of pushes you forward. And a lot of people go like, well, how come you didn't just use all your own money? Or I like having partners and a team and other people involved. I think their network ended up being extremely valuable. They're the ones who introduced us to a lot of the engineers we have on board now. One of the really cool guys I got to hear from was the CEO of Grin. His name is Brandon. I don't know if you know Grin.
No.
They're like a social media platform where they connect influencers with brands, basically. But he grew this company to $1 billion, and you get to sit here and talk to this guy. How did you get there? Talk through fundraising, all of that stuff. And that's the kind of access that the accelerator gave me and really opened up my eyes. Because before, a VC type company is a lot different than a private equity service company. In terms of how you approach seed round, A round, B round, that path and how you kind of build that trajectory and momentum versus growing profitably at scale year over year as a service company. They're completely different types of businesses, high tech, high risk, versus slow and steady growth, kind of more cornering the market through an M&A type approach, right?
How would you have built it if you had not already had some entrepreneurial success? Would you have raised money?
Your credibility is huge on your second time around. I think, especially for VCs, I think there's some statistic that folks that have been in business or whatever have a higher chance of success on the second round. I think they appreciate those statistics.
Investors, they bet on the entrepreneur, not on the idea.
Yeah. And so they're looking at, do you have prior experience? You know how to like manage a board and raise capital. And you've got to really be able to go fight for yourself and be able to raise the next round. And like, can you stay aggressive the whole time? Like, does the dog hunt really is the way that I look at it. So, I don't know I probably wouldn't. This project is so difficult that I wouldn't have been able to do this without prior experience. Like there's no way to even have the confidence level to go into the dark, the network, the patience, Like there's a lot of challenging aspects of this business specifically that like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been ready for 10 years ago.
I want to show this because I think that it gives people, I mean, first of all, I want folks to be watching on YouTube. You should be watching on YouTube because Derek and I are, are less attractive than this robot thing, and we want you to see it. I think it's really cool. It's clever and interesting the way that you adopt the Wall-E sort of moniker for it, because you actually talk about, and this is you at a demo day or your tech day, but this is the on-site robot out in the field, and damn if it doesn't look just like Wall-E. I mean, I think this alone speaks to the design chops of your team, just to be able to say, hey, we don't even really need it to look like it's like other age-y, right? Like we can tap into the zeitgeist of like, this was good enough for Disney, it's good enough for us. And it's just really nice looking and clever.
Yeah, if you go back up, that needle in the haystack one is
this guy.
That's the best representation, I think, of what we do there.
Yeah, I love that. Can you explain it?
Yeah, I really was trying to find some way to convey, we're finding really difficult things to find, like every day, like clockwork. Where if you were a technician walking around and if you found some of our stuff, it would like make your day. It's like, hundreds of these our team's finding every day. So
what is this? Like, I'm looking at this and I don't understand what it is that I see here.
Yeah, really what we're showing off there is the thermal capabilities to go detect something of high resistance that's causing an issue. Really, high resistance is going to lead to corrosion of the connectors. Those connectors then are going to create more resistance. Those
and
will
this
burn
bright
up.
Yellow is the high resistance, right here.
Yeah, that's correct. That little target is like right on the hottest part of the image. So
this is at the connector point, which is an MC4 connector.
Yeah, and you're showing right there, it's the smallest gap, right?
Yeah.
Of it's not connected fully.
Right.
And so,
right here, actually.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit higher.
Right here?
Right
here.
there. Yep.
Yep, right here.
It's like you'll never find that, right? But that will eventually. It's not going to get better. Resistance only increases over time, and it'll burn out if there's dry grass underneath. It could start a fire. And like I said, this may not show up for 3 to 4 years. I don't know how long it would take for it to eventually burn out. But we can find those things like clockwork, right?
Here's what I love, though. I want to point this out, too, for 2 reasons. One, I think that as a CEO, you're doing a great job of trying to find a way to communicate and convey the value that you provide without browbeating or even chest beating, right? It is practical examples. I think another person that does this really well is Mark Kingsley with The Lion. Like, he's constantly putting stuff like this online. And it's a great example of how, as a CEO, your job is to be leading in the thought experiments of how to communicate the message. People call it thought leadership, but really it's how do we challenge the people who engage with our brand, our product, our content to think differently, and how do we lead them to a different idea? That's what thought leadership is. And that is exactly what I think that you're doing here. I want to show this because I think that there aren't enough CEOs like you who put themselves out on social media like LinkedIn to do this. And it's rewarded, right? Like Ben Macias is someone that everyone in the industry respects. Stanislav, Catlin Mathis, everybody in the industry respects these guys in your field of technology, right? Who already are considered like well established in balance of system, in O&M, in inspections. So it's materially important. And also you've got this clever video, right? And I think that the way that you approach, and I think this is one of the reasons, I mean, I recently circled back around with you to say, hey, let's get this thing booked, because I saw you post something on LinkedIn. I was like, all right, seems like you're ready now. Let's get going, right? You can send these signals to the market without saying, hey, come buy my product. You can simply say, hey, here's one way that we think that the world is changing. And I think that you do that in a really elegant way. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, mostly grew up here in Sacramento. I was born
hometown boy.
I was born in Colorado. Lived there till about 5th grade, and then moved out to Sacramento, and really, really love it here.
Family, a large family, small nuclear family?
Boy and a girl.
Yeah,
Yeah, this one was cool. I mean, I've told the story. The robot, we were at a garage sale and found a
that's
little
that's what I remember the story from.
DJI. Yeah, I mean, but it's always so cool because it really started with me and my kids. So that's
Yeah.
always, gives you passion every day. They've been involved since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, DJI makes a little ground drone that has cameras on it, and you could drive it with like your iPad. You could send it around the house,
I
and
didn't know that.
you don't need to be next to it. It actually has like this little spring loader, and it'll shoot up like stairs and stuff. It's kind of
That's
cool.
so cool.
So we bought this thing at a garage sale for like $20, and I'm like, man, this thing's kind of cool. If you just had like a giant one of these, that's really what we need. And so
Yeah,
I
you
just,
spring load water up onto the panels. Okay.
so I just started. That's really what got it going. I'm like, all right, can you get a
That's
bigger one
fun.
of these? Well, who
All right,
makes
so I'm gonna back up.
those, right?
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, older brother, younger brother.
Yeah,
My younger brother's in the
you're a
industry as
middle kid.
well. Yep,
That
yep.
tells me a lot. I have a middle kid. I have three boys.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I was, and
okay.
then, some of the best advice I ever got was my older brother was, find something that you really like and master it. And that way you always have a skill set. You could do other stuff. And I think we're at like, we're at the peak of mastery here when you can completely automate,
That's
what you're doing.
beautiful.
But
What did
after
that lead you
15
to
years,
then? What did that lead you to? The thing that your brother said, find it. What mastery did you seek at that point?
I've always just been put in the time. I've been at like, if I'm going to work 2 hours more than the next guy every day, that's
Yeah.
kind of, you hear the story, but
Mm,
that's true. That's
yeah.
how I approach things. We're just
Yeah,
going to
but but but
put
core
in more
fundamental
time.
skills, you actually focused on engineering. Am I right?
Oh yeah. What was cool is you get a little bit of both. When you're in a growing industry, everybody's kind of entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So even I thought a big advantage I had was working at Solar Power Inc. We were
Hmm.
publicly traded. We were in the residential market. We were in the
Yep.
utility market. We're making trackers. We're making modules. So we have an overseas presence in China making modules and
Yeah.
QCing those and listing those on CEC and then building the sites and project management. Like we were doing everything. And it was growing very fast.
Yeah. Was SPI your first job?
Right before that, I just worked for like a local guy that they acquired. It was like,
Yeah.
a lot of the folks started at a Grass Valley here, and there was like Xantrex and all those folks, and it was just one of the old Xantrex guys who had a little shop out of his garage, and we were doing pool solar and hot water, and
Who was
a
that?
lot of. His name was Kevin Bodecker.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Um,
I remember Kevin. So that company got acquired by SPI. You got rolled in there. Do I remember that? Like you then was it SPI or SST where you went and hired all your friends?
that was SST. Yeah,
Okay, we'll get to it.
you're growing fast, and you're just like,
We'll get to that in a
yeah.
minute. So you grew up in the Sacto area, three brothers. Did you always have sort of an entrepreneurial bent, like going to garage sales or any other way that you felt like, oh, I've got this muscle in me?
Yeah, for sure. My most successful, I had a lemonade stand. We lived in Santa Cruz for a little bit, and
Hmm.
I had this
Nice.
lemonade stand on a golf course, and like, no joking, I was in second grade. I'd make $500 to $1,000 a day on this lemonade stand.
What?
To the point where like my parents would have to take the money and like because I would just go rent like 100 video games or
Right.
you're in
That's
second grade, you don't
hilarious.
know what you're doing. But yeah, that was probably what got it started, man. And that was
Did
like,
you have that idea, or did your parents go, "Hey, what if you put a lemonade stand up on the golf course"? Was there a fostering or mentoring from
I
that
think it
angle?
was like I was probably bored during the
Right.
summer, and it was
How
just
interesting.
like, let's go get some country time lemonade and go
What?
do like get the hell out of the house, right?
What career path did
But
you
it
not?
was.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, it's just
Thought it
a
was.
sweet spot on this golf course. And I'll still go back there, and there's like always another kid there.
That's fun. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So it teaches you like location, be in the
Do
right
you give him like
place,
100
you
spot?
know?
You're like, here, kid, keep going. Give him like a $10 tip. What career path did you not go down, but always thought you would?
I think a lot of people are like, hey, you want to be an entrepreneur or be a leader. I'm like totally cool just executing for somebody else too. Like I enjoyed
Oh,
being a project manager. I really loved commissioning. I thought
yeah,
that was cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
love
you were doing
QC
commissioning.
stuff,
You were
engineering,
doing commissioning for
design.
basic quality assurance at SPI. That's why you got into commissioning, right?
Yeah, it really evolved with the industry. Like you'd build a project, things would go wrong, and they go, "Oh shit, we should probably check these things at the end of the
Yeah.
like all these things naturally. Like nobody was commissioning in the very beginning. Then commissioning
Yeah.
became a thing,
Yeah.
and then the site would go offline, and you'd have like all this after commissioning stuff you needed to do. That eventually became O&M. We started looking at other industries and kind of, what did the wind industry do? And what did, and you kind of start stealing all these ideas. But I really kind of just went through that process with the rest of the industry evolving.
You said earlier that really you owed a lot of the success of SST to the core skills that you developed at Solar Power Inc. Could you give me some more specifics around the work that you did at Solar Power Inc. and how it led you to the idea of Sun System Technology, what everyone now refers to or remembers as SST?
Yeah, from a skill set standpoint, two of my favorite kind of roles were project management. Is like you're basically running your own business, right? Every little project, you have a budget, you have a time schedule, you've got a team of people you got to get on board and communicate with, and a schedule that needs to be followed. You have to buy things, and you've got vendors. And I just think if anybody wants to start a business, go get a job as a project manager first. You'll learn how to get a lot of stuff done on time and manage a budget.
Such good advice. I've never heard anybody say that. That's really solid advice.
I think it's the best job. I always tell everybody, I go, start there. Because you'll be able to touch a little bit of everything: engineering, construction, permitting, budgets, financing, accounting. I always just think
Preach.
I think that's I will hire anybody who's been a project manager before.
Yeah. Do you look for project management certifications or anything like that?
No, I always wanted to get one. The industry grew so fast. It was like every time you get settled into a spot, you'd like move on to the next one. So the previous certificates didn't make sense. It was like probably the biggest regret of like not truly mastering every step of the way.
Like you, like me, probably didn't get NABCIP certified, though you wanted to. Didn't get project management certified. Like I have the project management book of knowledge in my library right now, right? And I read it, but I never got the certification because I didn't have time to like slow down and go get the qualification. I didn't plan to stay as a lifelong project manager.
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff. I took all the NABCIP classes, and I think they're still doing pretty well, but I don't know how much that matters anymore.
It matters a lot. We're friends with NABCIP and partner with them. Get NABCIP certified.
No, I love it. I think it can evolve a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, I'd always hire NABCIP guys. It always helps when you're going into I thought it was great for new markets.
Yeah. Tell me the moment where you realized that O&M was woefully deficient and how that sparked the idea for Sun System Technologies.
Really, we got a phone call from SunPower
at SPI.
Yeah. When I had, at SPI, we just had a little O&M group. Yeah. And we had existing assets we were taking care of. And we started looking at the numbers, and we're like, man, I think we're like the only part of the company making money here.
Profitable.
Yeah, because O&M can be profitable. And I think that's what's attractive about it from a service org standpoint. You can actually make some money. You're not going to make as much as if you went and built a $100 million project and you made 10% on it. So that's the other thing. It's a slow grind, kind of build up aggregation type business. But it's also a business you can start with low capital, which you see a lot of people, they start services businesses as their first business, right? Because you could go do the work, you can make the money, and you could slowly like build up and hire another person, and you can organically grow these things. Yeah. Where, like I said, with OnSight today, you got to go get it. We had, you're going to burn some cash to get to the point of creating something that nobody else can create, right? So that's really where it started, was kind of like, wow, this is like an interesting business. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. You got a phone call.
Yeah. Then I broke off, and SPI was my first client, was taking care of a few of their sites.
Love it. Leave and sell your services to your former employer. That's a common pathway.
It was actually their suggestion. I'm like a super loyal dude.
No way.
I'll go down with the ship. They're like, hey, why don't you like go start your own thing? So we'll just like, you could go, we'll give you the contracts or whatever. So I was like, okay,
that's super
great.
Cool. Did they become equity partners in some way in SST at that point?
No, it was a really small. It was like
Wow.
wouldn't have been worth the paperwork, right?
Sure. Yeah.
At that time.
No doubt they're super proud of the work that you turned it into, though. Yeah,
Yeah, there
that's
was
cool.
some really good folks there that were my mentors.
Who were they?
Yeah, and then Steve Kircher, who was the CEO, he's like really good entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Bob Wood, who ended up running Trimark for a little bit, he's the CEO of Reviver now. Yeah, but like killer executives there that
Yeah,
hooked me up with some good opportunities.
totally. So SST, I remember you and I talking about a conversation you had with Rue at some point, Rue Phillips, who started Pronto 365 and True South, one of your contemporaries in the industry, thinking about as being pioneers in O&M. Could you compare and contrast like the way others were thinking about O&M and the way you started thinking about O&M?
Really, I was trying to start a utility O&M business. And then we were in a meeting with SunPower, and they were like, hey, there's all these residential systems
Yeah.
that need to be fixed. And because of my background, I had utility plus residential experience. I wasn't scared of the resi market at all. And so I saw these, there was like, you start to see how big the resi market is. And even I was at SAMNA this past couple of weeks, and I ran into somebody from Palmetto, and he's like, man, there's no
Yeah.
residential companies here. And I always thought residential's so underrepresented at those conferences because I'm
Yeah.
like, there's 3 million homes. Like the volume
Right.
and scale of the resi market is often overlooked. And so we started doing residential. It became like a big logistical problem. Like, how can you do 3 or 4 work orders in a day? And how do you really figure this problem out? And I think we kind of started. There's like lots of other residential service companies today, but before it wasn't really a business.
It wasn't.
But
I
then we
remember
started. Yeah.
nobody was servicing the sector, and you guys literally just were able to swoop in and scoop up all the contracts. Like everybody was happy to give you their problems. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those perfect scenarios, like perfect timing, great team, work ethic. You were working 24/7. Where do you think you, looking back on it, what would you do differently, if anything, with SST?
I try not to do that.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe,
There's
let me
all
ask you a
kinds of
question.
things, right?
That's
If you're going to
do you-
be like the older guys are always like, hey man, take your time and things go slow. And you could always say that when you get older. I think when you're younger, you're just jamming through, trying to get experience and figure it all out.
how old were you when you started it?
I think I was like 29, 30.
And to my point earlier, you basically were like, "Hey, all aboard! This train's moving. We need hands on the oars, right?" And you were hiring your friends, you were hiring everybody around you.
Yeah. You had to train. It wasn't like there wasn't people out there that were residential service techs.
Right.
So I remember our first employee, who ended up being our best employee, actually, like set all the records for most service calls. It was my younger brother's friend. He's at our house one day. There's like 4 of us there with Sun System, and he's like, hey, I just quit my pizza job. I'm coming to work for you. And I'm like,
No
man,
way.
I don't even have a job here. And he just started working, and he ended up doing more service calls than everybody else. He still works at Nova Source today. But yeah, it's a cool industry.
What's
man.
that guy's name?
Been,
Let's shout out that hard worker.
Matthew Swink. Yeah.
Matthew Swink. Way to go, Matthew.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you've seen it. It's been cool to watch folks come from other industries and build a career in the solar market. There's a lot of opportunity if you could hustle,
That's the coolest thing about entrepreneurship too, is that I think what we all realize after you get over the self-indulgence of like, I want to build something that makes money, I want to have like time freedom, whatever. You then realize like, oh, I've built something that gives time and financial freedom to others, not just my family. That gives security to others, not just my family. I now have 50, 500 employees. I now support what would be an entire city, right? Of that becomes the what's it for, right?
That becomes when it's like serious, right? I remember was the first person who had a kid or a family, right? We were all just young, like bachelors.
Yeah.
And then, somebody shows up, they got a family, and you're like, man, we gotta take this pretty serious. We gotta make sure. But yeah, that's when things get serious. There's other people to take care of, and you gotta like manage the risk appropriately.
Do you know what I really appreciated? I realized that SST was like a real deal, big time business where I was like, man, I really respect what Chase is building here. Um, is when our friend Mark went to work for you, and he was probably like 20 years your senior, right? And he'd been selling for Premier and others in the area, and like he and I sold against each other. And I saw him at a Samna one year, and he was like standing at the SST booth, and I was like, "Yo, you're at SST?" And he was like, "Yeah, dude, this company's on the rise." And I was like, "Man, I got to get on the phone with Derek. I got to figure out what's going on here. Like these guys are doing something right, you know." What did it feel? What did you experience in terms of people management as you started to hire in that kind of talent? Like now you're hiring people and it's one of those things. It's like, I'm kind of so lucky to be able to work with these people from NASA. Like I can't believe they want to work on this idea. But it's also, you've built this ability, this skill to manage and inspire. That's not something that comes naturally to everyone. Do you remember being in that, having that feeling of insecurity of like, man, these older people are older than me are working for us?
Credit to the individuals. Like Mark Santos, right?
Santos is a legend.
Yeah, he was just super cool about it. They're like, they're older. They know how to manage the situation better than you do. You got to kind of trust them. But you need senior folks on the team. You want good diversity of age and um, um, just diversity across the board was actually really interesting. Problem once you got really big, just managing that. Like you don't see it at a smaller scale, but at a bigger scale, you do want you don't want a bunch of people the same age and
Yeah.
sex making all the decisions.
Right.
I kind of learned that as things scaled. You're like, oh yeah, okay, I could see why this is a big deal.
I know that there's so much that I could dig into, and but I want to be respectful of the time that we've been allotted. And you mentioned something earlier that stands out to me, and that is this concept of the what I feel like is a brand or product extension, this owl cam and fire detection. Talk to me about your perceptiveness now as an entrepreneur of outside of the industry and outside of the perimeter or the fence of the kind of business you're building. I find that a lot of entrepreneurs get really myopic, myself included. I'm building a media business in the solar industry. It can get much smaller than that, right? Can you talk about, as an entrepreneur, building something that gives you multi-market dimensionality?
Yeah, I think, well, no, the way that I think about it is you've got to go build a business first before you start looking into other markets.
Yeah.
We've got a great opportunity to generate revenue, add value, optimize the product. And the solar industry is growing so fast. It's almost like, and you probably feel this way. I don't know if I'll ever get out of it. Like you'd love to expand.
Or bored with it.
You'd love to expand your product. Well, I just mean from a product perspective of diversifying into other markets.
Right.
Like we're always eyeing and looking around, what other value could we provide to other industries,
Right.
Agriculture, etc. But it just feels like the solar industry will gobble up all your demand given the growth of it. So I don't know if that opportunity will come or not. I was blown away that a lot of folks in fire and smoke detection industry that we've been speaking with are like, we've never seen a product like yours before. In their very specific market. So we came at it with just a totally, hey, let's stop fires on solar systems perspective. But we are looking into partners and distributors for other, we'll let them go grow those other industries. We want to stay really focused on the solar industry.
Is there anything, as you reflect on the growth, your personal growth as a business owner, that and even through being involved in YPO, being involved in the accelerator, is there something that you come back to regularly as a truth that was shared to you that now has become one of those mentor tropes that you share with others? What kind of advice do you find yourself giving other entrepreneurs that you wish that you'd had?
I think it's always good to have somebody else you can talk to, which is what YPO is great for, is your when you're at the top, it's really difficult. You've got a lot of different folks with different influence, whether it's your board or your counterparts or your CFO or whoever, right? Whoever you're working with, I think it's great to have somebody to talk to about your problems. And I do that. I have like a good peer group of other folks that have started their companies or working through things. So I think that's really important to work through those ideas and have people you can reach out to. That's why organizations like YPO are important. So I always tell people that, because you've got to really trust your instincts. You've got to weigh a lot of opinions, but ultimately you have to make a decision, at the end of the day, and you got to live with that. So, I think you want people to look out for you in those circumstances and have people, on your side of the table.
I know that you're right now focused on OnSight, but I also know that you, as an entrepreneur, have been at least thinking about or looking into investing. Is there any corners of climate tech that have really caught your attention, or even companies that you're really excited about right now in the climate tech space?
Yeah, we started a little group called Ripmo Ventures, and we give like seed capital and little advice here and there or whatever. But we invested in a company called EV Life, which is really cool. They do pretty much like, there's all these incentives for EVs. They'll go find all of those, and bundle them all up and apply them to like a loan, and then you pay
the lowest rate on EV guareed.
Okay, yeah, there you go. You're Googling it or whatever. Yeah,
fuck yeah, I'm really Googling it.
Yeah, really cool guys. They're big fan of the
That's cool.
FracSun guys.
Oh, dude, yes.
Because honestly, that was a problem that was just in my head for so long, and then eventually I met them. I'm like, oh, you guys solved the problem.
Right.
Which I think we were all trying to figure out. There are so many contraptions out there trying to do this, and I thought the
question everybody asks with a product like FracSun, it's a product like Daily Energy too. Like those guys are super smart, but is it too narrow of a market? And I don't mean any Catlin, don't take this the wrong way, man. We love you, but I ask myself as an entrepreneur and as an investor, right? Like, is this too narrow? Yes. Will Catlin and FracSun succeed? Yes. Will they get acquired? Probably. Have they already raised investment from oil and gas? Yes. We talked about that on the show, but as an entrepreneur, like how small is too small, right? That's often the question you have to ask. Is that how do you validate the size of the market? I'm a big fan of FracSun as well. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. I just wanted to.
No, I mean it's a good point, right? When you're growing, either way, with OnSight, we could be small, we could be very niche. How aggressive and fast do you want to grow? Mm-hmm. Where are you at versus your competitors? It's definitely 3D. It's definitely 3D chess. There's a lot of things you need to think through. Can your team? One thing that I've learned when you're talking about what have you learned, sometimes you got to wait for your team to evolve before you can, like, how fast can you go without burning out your entire team and like keeping it all together without causing damage? Like, you got to make sure your entire team's on board for that ride.
That's a really good point. Is there anything that you've turned to? Maybe it's a book or YPO is one example, but like, are there resources that have been particularly useful or helpful to you as you've grown as an entrepreneur?
Obstacle is the Way is a cool one. Yeah. That's one that I applied to like theory all the time. I'm always like, man, what is our biggest problem? If we just like move that giant rock, everything will figure itself out.
Yeah. Are you a big Ryan Holiday fan or just that book?
Actually, I liked the book more, and then he did an interview or something, and I'm like, I actually liked it less afterwards, because it was like too well thought out the way that he put it together. He like put it together for a specific market. Was like,
he's very specific. I mean, he's a super, super smart guy. He's also stoic. That's kind of where he's putting most of his effort.
I
like Ryan Holiday. That book is great.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. I like Jesse Itzler's a good guy.
Oh, dude. I follow him on Instagram. It's the only place I can tolerate Jesse in like Instagram quotes.
Well, I'm actually a huge fan of
his
huge fan of his wife, right?
For sure.
Yeah,
likely.
She's probably built the best, most successful business I've ever seen in terms of doing it her way, exiting appropriately, and hooking everybody up on the way out.
That's cool.
I don't think she gets enough credit.
Study Sarah Blakely, but also Itzler is no chump. Built NetJets. Built Zico Water, right? Like companies that any entrepreneur can admire.
Yeah, he's like, little guerrilla marketing guy, but
I love his running company and all the stuff he's doing now with personal health and even like every year he does. I send it to my whole team. Every year he does a end of year, like how I think about planning my year out, and I recommend everybody do it. Actually, I'm going to make a note here. Send link to Itzler. If you haven't seen this, his 24 minutes to plan 2024.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did have like the big ass calendar or
Yeah.
yeah, I get to do it every now and then. It'll give you a little entrepreneur juice.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I started searching like, where can I make the big ass calendar myself? I'm not going to pay for it. Like,
I
anyway,
liked who's the 4 Hour Work Week guy?
Tim
Um,
Ferriss. Hmm.
Tim Ferriss. He's got these big books that are like Mind of Mentors or I don't know if you've seen
Yeah. Tribe
those.
of Mentors. Hmm.
Those are cool. You open it up to just like a page. You could open
They're
it up every
encyclopedias.
day
Hmm.
and you could just, read a page in the morning or whatever.
Totally. I've seen you active, and we shared your some of your activity on LinkedIn. I know that's where folks can find you. Do you respond to folks that reach out? Are you pretty active on LinkedIn and the DMs and such?
Yeah. I've got a quick story on how I got into LinkedIn that's kind of interesting.
Do share.
So I was with, I don't know if you know Troy Lauterbach.
Yeah.
So I was with Troy one day. We were both at NovaSource, and one day we made this fake LinkedIn account. And his name was Hamilton Pools. And it was like an inside joke. And this guy had like the most amazing resume you've ever had. And it was just like for fun. We were just playing around. And then it started connecting to everybody. And we're like, oh, let's just comment on people's stuff. And so we had this like fake profile to play with and link up with people and like, how many followers could we get? And it was like totally messing around. But I got to go see how the whole thing worked and how people interacted and connected. And eventually, somebody reported the character or something and they kicked it off of LinkedIn.
No way.
But it was, we were talking, it got pretty big. It had like 10,000 followers. That's where I got to learn everything. And I wasn't as, like, who cares, man? Comment on people's stuff and, enjoy the community. I used to love, Solar Pro magazine.
So good.
They used to have on their website, there was like a tech talk or
That
something.
forum.
That forum was, I don't know who's going to make the next forum of what that is. LinkedIn's a little bit of it, but
You and I will.
but yeah, dude, that was for free. You would get engineers answering very difficult, in-depth questions for fun. You know what I mean? I guess it's like a Reddit. It was like a Reddit before Reddit kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always
awesome.
just kind of been into like, technical networks and
Yeah.
talking shop and stuff. So
If you're interested in building the next Solar Pro Mag forum, let's talk. And if you're listening to this and you want to jump in and help us, let's talk. Serious talk here.
somebody needs to do it.
All right,
Yeah.
let's wrap now, because we both got businesses to run and things to attend to. I'm so grateful for the more than almost 90 minutes now that we've gotten to kind of sit at the feet of one of the guys that I really admire. I think that your entrepreneurial story is so cool. There are still stories untold. I hope that folks will come up to you at the trade shows and in the field and ask you to share more stories like this fun story of Hamilton Pools. I think that's awesome. If you could leave every person that you meet with one thing, what would that be?
Just keep going.
Keep going. And if you really reflect on it, what will have changed as a result of the work that you're doing?
I think by the time we're done, we will substantially reduce the risk of solar sites, whether it's responding to fires quicker, preventing issues in the field, increasing the overall bankability. And the amount of data we're going to gather can be applied to a lot of systems you can't even put robots on. I think the sample size, again, of being able to inspect 1 million things and telling you that 0.001% of those things is bad, that's what we're going to be able to do. And I think it'll have a pretty dramatic impact through insurance companies, new products that address the issues that we find. So yeah, that's kind of my hope.
I look forward to the entrepreneurs that thank you one day for the business you helped build because of the technology that you enabled. Derek Chase is the founder and CEO of OnSight Technologies. Please go follow him on LinkedIn. Reach out to him. He's very accessible. I encourage you not just reach out and connect, but emulate. Success leaves clues, my friends. Today, you've had a chance to get a little bit more insight into the clues to this man's success. Derek, thank you for taking time to join us on Suncast at long last.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Big fan of the show. Thank you.